Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Prepare Fight Fire podcast. Another awesome guest I have today, Captain Eric Price. Eric, welcome.
Thank you very much, Julian.
Yeah, of course. So I had the pleasure of meeting Captain Price at a recent class that we took with our. We work for the same department at a recent class we took, which was called Search Culture, Do It Right. And this class is basically, the premise of it is just reframing your perspective on what the priority of a primary search is and where it is on our tactical objective list. And it was a fun class, but it was a hard class in that aspect of getting a lot of reps and doing the work of performing primary searches, VESs, and getting reps in. And for anybody that is on an engine or truck company that's performing those, it's a lot of work, man. And Captain Price comes in with a boatload of experience. And it was just amazing to see him in that environment, still being a student of the craft. So I want to talk to you, Cap, about your perspective. What was your perspective when the class popped up? Because I do know you're kind of on your way out in this career, and that's a class that I feel not many people in your position would say, I'm going to take that class.
Well, you get to a point in your career when you got to stay motivated and you got to stay hungry. And this class popped up, and I'm at the point in my career where I am on my way out in another couple of years. And, I teach a lot and I take a lot of different other classes, and this popped up and I said, this looks pretty good. And I know signing up for this class, I would be surrounded by a bunch of hungry animals that wanted to go and get a lot of reps and be aggressive. So I signed up, and then I found out I was probably the first officer to sign up for the class. And day one started, and I got put in a group with you and a bunch of other hungry animals. And the next 3 days were, my mind says go and my body starts laughing. And, I held my own. I think I did pretty good as an older guy. It gives you a new perspective of what's that.
Oh, you're being super humble. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, all I can say is you guys worked out in the morning and did these crazy workouts, and then did the class, and I went home at night and slept. So that's all I can say is it was a great class. It gives you a perspective on why we're there. I know we are all firefighters, and that's our title, firefighter, or whatever else comes after that. But it gives you the perspective of we are here to search. We're here to get ahead of the hose line. We're here to, life, safety, and then property conservation. And we're here to save people and how to be very aggressive and get in that mindset. And it was an awesome class. It was a recharge for me, and that's why I took the class.
What was your perspective on our personnel in that class? Because it was really refreshing for me to see so many people hungry and performing at what I thought was a very high level, right? It was May, so it wasn't quite as hot as it is now, but it wasn't cool outside. And we were in gear, probably 8 hours out of the day. And I was very impressed. What was your thought process taking the information you learned and going back to the station?
When you sign up for a class, the people that sign up want to be there. So the vibe in the class was very aggressive and positive, and it was fun. I mean, it was like a big giant party every day, and we learned a lot of great information from the instructors, and we got to share information with each other, and we got to learn from each other, and it was a great experience. And going back to the station, not everybody at station life may be in your aggressive mindset or motivated mindset. So we have been practicing what we learned in the class, but on a less aggressive schedule. But you have to tailor your training to your audience and make sure that they have buy-in. So you start slow and then you slowly add in, and it's been a very positive experience all the way around.
So I love what you said, and you've been a great leader in our organization and in the fire service, and your approach is why people will follow you to the ends of the earth. You just said something that's amazing, the buy-in. So talk to me about what your approach is when you have your crew and you want to develop them in their mindset, their fitness, and their tactics. What do you mean by buy-in? Let's talk about that.
So knowing your audience and having them buy in for me means some people may be an aggressive animal. Some people may not be. You know, you have strong people and you have not so strong people, and fast and not so fast. So you try to find that middle balance. And what I do with training is I like to set my crews or my classes up for success. There's classes that are built that way that you can put on, that I like to put on. And then there's other classes where it's you show up and you're tested every minute of the day. For me at work, that's not the platform that I lay out. What I lay out is skill stations. So I'll break down the training into multiple skill stations, and we'll practice over the next couple of shifts every aspect of what we're going to do to set my crews up for success. It makes them comfortable. It builds confidence. It shakes the rust. It's a great refresher on a lot of stuff, and some is new. Then you'll get into some more basic evolutions where I'll go first in every evolution, lead by example. I'm old and I'm banged up, so if I can do it, you know, maybe you can try to do it, and get into it, but maybe a half speed evolution. And then once you build confidence on that, you know, then you tell them, hey, we're gonna set this up. You know, there's going to be multiple victims, but we're going to go real speed, real time. And then they kind of get pumped up because you've built their confidence, you've motivated them, they know they can do it, and then they go in. But it's the scenario is what it is. And I've had a lot of success with that.
I love it, man. I love it. And tell me your approach on, because you were literally neck and neck with me in the class, and we were working together, and it was, that's how I was brought up, right? And not everybody in the fire service is brought up that way, where your officer, your leader, you know, the head guy in charge is not just telling you, hey, go do this. Hey, I need you to do that. No, he's next to you, showing you what needs to be done. Have you always been that way? Were you brought up that way, or where does that come from?
I was always raised from, you know, my parents raised me to be accountable and responsible for my actions. My upbringing was different. You know, I grew up in somewhat of a rough area, and you had to be accountable and responsible for your actions. And then getting into life in the fire service, I had some great leaders, you know, and I'll say their names right now because I'm proud of them, and I miss them because they're retired. They're all doing well. Daryl Newport and John Wright Sr. and Tom Phillips, and James Ribble is still chief for another department, and you know, James Schaffner, and there's a number of countless other role models that I have that from a very young age, getting in the fire service at 19 years old, get a hold of you and they're like, hey man, this is how it works, and this is what you're supposed to do, and always working alongside of people that were aggressive and had a motivated mentality. And if you have a problem, you better come to the table with a solution. And you're only as good as the people that surround you. So if you want to have a really good crew, you have to bring your crews up to speed where you are, and your crews have to share with their officer and keep them informed on new standards to keep them informed and up to speed, so you can work as a team. And then you become a very well-oiled machine to where at any point in time, any one of your crew members can step into any role in that position. It doesn't matter what your rank or title is. And that's how I was raised and brought up, and that's how I train.
That's amazing, man. Yeah. I attest, you know, everything I have, and I made mistakes along the way. None of us are perfect. And I'm very open about the mistakes I've made. And I feel like that's a letdown to my mentors, but you know, all of them I've talked to and I'm very forward and honest with them and tell them the mistakes I make. I don't hide behind a cloth or a closet. I'm very transparent, and they say, you know, that's just a part of life. That's a part of growing as a firefighter. And the biggest thing that I give them credit for is giving me everything they have, you know, like actually spending the time and developing me into the firefighter I am today. And I would not be who I am without that. And I think that's the premise of what the fire service is and what it should always be. I think we've gotten away from people giving what they've learned, and showing people how to do things the right way and what the standard is. And I want to talk to you about what your standard is, and have you developed that throughout your career, or have you always, since you came in, said, I'm just going to do it right?
I think because I've been surrounded by really good mentors that have always taught me to be accountable and responsible. And I've made more mistakes than I've done right. And I'm not ashamed of it. And a mistake can be positive or negative. A negative mistake in my eyes is you don't learn from it and you don't try to get better and you don't own it. You need to own it right then and there. You need to correct it. You need to get help. You need to, if it's a disciplinary issue, you take your lumps and you grow from it and you try to become a better person. If you can do that, then that's a positive experience making a mistake. A negative experience of making a mistake is basically blowing it off and pointing your finger at everybody else. When you point your finger at somebody, you have three fingers pointing back at you. So, hey, be accountable and responsible for yourself. And people that don't own their mistakes and try to learn from them and get better, that's the problem in the fire service today. It took a lot of coaching and mentoring and guiding for me to understand the right way, to try to do the right ways, to learn from other people's mistakes, to seek help and get counseling in different manners to become a better person, and fine tune yourself. And it probably took till I was around 40 years old to get it, and to eat humble pie and admit my mistakes and my wrongdoings and admit that I was wrong. And I just wasn't born, to do great things. I was born in, Philadelphia, and I got brought up a certain way, and we moved to Florida, and I got involved in the fire service, and I was lucky and fortunate enough to be surrounded by great leaders who were humbled and made lots of big mistakes and were able to pass on the right ways to me. And that's what I try to do today.
Yeah, absolutely. And we are all creations, right? We create the person, we create the career, we create the finance, we create the fitness level. Nobody, and lately it's been a reoccurring thing with coaching of comparison. Well, I just see what you're doing, or I see what they're doing. I see that this guy got hired, and I'm just like, you don't know what they've been through. You don't know what effort or attention they've put at this certain craft. You don't know for how long, right? Like, you don't start a boxing class and then get in the ring with Floyd Mayweather. That's just not how it works. You would never compare yourself to Floyd, because what would you say? You would say, oh, well, he's been boxing his entire life. So like, the same thing goes for leadership in the fire service. Same thing goes for, being a good officer in the fire service, fitness in the fire service, the ability to work well as a team, right? Those are all things that come with experience. And I want to ask you, with your array of experience in the fire service, how have you managed so well the different personalities?
Trying to, right up front from day one, lay out, some ground rules, meaning, mutual respect, trying to accept someone for who they are, not what they are. And it comes down to leading by example. And I try to do that by my training aspects. I try to do that by showing my crews that I'm accountable and responsible for my actions. And the best way to understand and learn your crew is to get out of the station, get out of the parking lot of your station, and go out and train outside. There's days for inside training, and there's days where you need to know your crew, but the only way to really learn about each other from the top down, from the newest firefighter to the oldest firefighter, is get out and train and pick their brains and watch each other perform. And then that also comes down to gear acclimation and learning how long your crews can function in gear, and when they need a break, and knowing yourself or your crews understanding why you think that way. And you just don't tell your crews what to do during training. You teach them and you coach them and you explain why and how and different options. And in my career in the fire service, the only way I've been successful and to get to know people is to train with them and to share things with them. And share with them and have them share with me and learn different things or help someone motivate. And it comes down to be accountable for your crews and their actions and vice versa and getting out and training. So training is, to me, the core of everything I do.
Yeah, I do have to say there's a level of vulnerability when you go train, that when you see somebody who is of a statue of a good leader or whatever, people say this about him and that person, you see him in action, you see him make mistakes and you're like, man, I made a mistake. I think people are more vulnerable. They drop their defensive and they're like, man, like he's a good firefighter. He's a great officer and he makes mistakes. So like, I trust that I can make a mistake now and I can be honest and I can show him what I have and be honest to say, hey, I'm not proficient at this or I'm not proficient at that. And I think the biggest thing that I see with our department is we have a lot of people that don't realize the expectation is not perfection. The expectation is growth, right? Is progress, is to get better, is to make mistakes, learn from them, and move forward. We had a drill the other day. We went up to the tower, and it was a simple. I was on a truck company. It was a simple evolution where we rolled up 2-unit response. Command was established, and we had a VES on the 3rd floor, and we had a working fire on the 2nd floor. So one crew put in a line and initiated fire attack. The next group performed a VES on the 3rd floor off the area. We knew what the assignment was. Everybody went up. Mistakes were made, and after we broke down the run and the training, and everybody was vulnerable. Everybody was like, "Hey, man, I could have done this better, or I could have done that better." And after that moment, you could see everybody was a lot more comfortable and trust each other just a little bit more, rather than being at the station and just running calls and not really knowing like what this guy's about or what he's proficient at, what he's not proficient at. And as a leader, I think in our organization with so much movement, that is an issue, not knowing your personnel and not knowing that they trust you or you trust them or you have their back or your sole mission is to support them, not they support you. And I want to talk about, your career specifically. I think you've had a different career in our organization because you spent so much time in special operations. And do you feel like had you not spent so much time in special operations, would you have a different perspective or you just obviously would have worked with more people?
I would have definitely worked with more people. But that's a hard question to answer. I think that people in the fire service gravitate towards like people. And I feel that no matter where I would have ended up, it would have been with aggressive people. And that's a hard one because I can't tell the future or I couldn't tell about, I could just tell you about the past. I think like people gravitate towards each other and knowing that's why I think I've been successful in the fire service because I've always gravitated towards aggressive people. To touch on something that you just mentioned about your training is yeah, you run an evolution and everybody makes mistakes, but after an evolution like that, run the same evolution, the same exact evolution over again, the same seat assignments, so your crews can finish on a positive note and build confidence and leave that training saying, hey, I made a mistake. We corrected it. We finished on a positive note. And then they're going to be more hungry to come back next time.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. I just, I come with experience from somewhere else with not the, thought process of just constantly meeting new people, right? I was with the same crew for 4 years, which isn't a long time, but where we work, it's a very long time. Like that's really unheard of, right? 4 years. But for 4 years, I had the same officer, the same driver, the same firefighters, the same chief, the same EMS captain at the same station, which was amazing because, like you said, we were able to show our deficiencies and work on them. We were able to trust each other. We were able to go out and improve together as a unit and understand each person's, strengths and weaknesses. As far as, in the space of constant movement, what would you tell the person that is constantly working with new people? would you say like, hey, you know what, it's just Groundhog Day, or is it one of those things where you just do your best for that day?
If you're floating around and you don't have a consistent crew all the time, it's hard to understand or know what everybody else knows. And maybe sit down and pick their brain in the morning at shift change, when you get your seat assignment for the day, and find out, who's done what, or who's taken what classes, or how long somebody's been there. I think it's, look at, if you're a floating person and you're around, your department a lot, it's kind of like 51st dates, every single shift. So you got to really make more of an effort to communicate with people and find out, what their vibe is. Are they shy? Do they not answer questions confidently? Do they take classes? Are they motivated? What classes or what fire conferences have they gone to? What parts of the country have, the United States that they've trained? You have to be more outgoing to understand who you're working with for that day, because it's a crapshoot. You don't know, is the person, really smooth and have a great game, and then you pull up on a basic call and then you're like, this person didn't even put their gear on? Or are they really quiet and they showed up and they knocked it out of the park? It's hard. You really have to learn how to read people, and it comes down to communication and asking them, hey, what are we going to train on today? And it comes down to being accountable for yourself and responsible for yourself, and asking questions, and maybe getting people out of their comfort zone, saying, what are we going to train on today? Or what are we going to do? And then being able to see people perform different things. That's my take on it. That's what I did when I started floating as an officer for a while. And, you have to, every shift, challenge your crews and ask them questions and give them achievable goals and training to succeed and get to know them. And then after a while, hopefully you run into them every now and then. You kind of have a general idea of who can do what and where.
That's great advice. That's you have to be hungry. You got to be hungrier, right? You got to be able to communicate. You got to be able to talk and set a clear expectation, because you don't have that trust of knowing what A person and B person are going to do on a fire, on an extrication, on a commercial fire, on a medical call, on a cardiac arrest. Like, you don't have that trust of just being immersed with the same people running those calls for time, right? The experience. So that was amazing stuff. So I want to transition here into the conversation of smoke divers. So I know we talked a lot about it throughout the class we took, but for the guests that don't know, it wasn't an easy task, and I want to talk about your failures along the way.
The first time I went to smoke divers, I trained for 8 months, and I was 32 years old. I was accepted into Georgia Smoke Diver tryout program. I passed the written and the physical agility test, and on day 2, I ended up getting hurt after training for 8 months. And that was a huge blow to me, meaning I trained, I picked other people's brains that have successfully completed smoke divers. I went through the evolutions. I did everything everybody told me. I tailored my diet, and day 2, I got hurt. I came home, got better, started training again. Probably a year and a half later, I went back again to Georgia's program. I think it was around day 3.5. I ended up getting sick. And they did everything they could for me there. The organization, the Georgia Smoke Diver Program organization, is amazing. They have a ton of support. The instructors are top notch. They're professional, but you're there to earn the title of smoke diver. And that's made very clear. At no point in time did I ever feel, disrespected or anything like that. They have a program to run. They did everything they could for me that day, and it did work out. So I ended up getting pulled again on a medical. So I came home and had to reevaluate, do I want to try to do this again? And then it was, everything got worked out, and, I went and got checked out by some doctors and, got my stuff straight. So I started training again, and I'm like, I'm going to do this one more time. I have to do it. I just turned 35 years old, started at 32. Most of the people that try, that go attempt this class are young, a lot younger, and so my timing was working out where Tennessee Fire Academy had the Tennessee Smoke Diver program that, was a sister program of Georgia's, and because they had worked together on some things. So I applied to the Tennessee Codes Enforcement Academy, got accepted into their smoke diver program, and then went there. And it was a little bit different mentality. It was not there wasn't 60 instructors there a day. There was the 4 or 5, the 4 instructors there a day. They would, they lectured on it. They demonstrated it. You practiced it. You did it. And then you watched it when you and your partner completed your evolution, or if it was an individual evolution. You ran everywhere. It was crazy, some of the stuff that we did. And it didn't matter how well you did until the last day. If you didn't have 80 points, you didn't pass. So right. You could pass everything, but you had points, and it was nerve-wracking. And being with a lot of younger people in the class, it was hard to stay positive and focused. It was the hardest thing I ever completed in my life. It made me a better person. It was a humbling experience, more humbling. I recommend this type of program to anybody, but you need to train for a long time. You need to get with people that have gone through this process and pick their brains. And when you pick someone's brain, they're not going to tell you what it is. You're going to take away from, but you're going to show them in gear workouts, how to eat, nutrition, hydration, recovery, things like that, to get them prepared for what they're going to face. And you're never prepared. You're just not. And I'm proud that I was able to complete that in my life. That was a goal. It took me several times, and it was hard, man. It was hard. Would I do it again now? Absolutely not. I'll be 48 this year, and my body would not allow that.
So let me ask you, Cap, why? What's your why? Why did you go up there? Why were you so persistent? Most people would just put it out to, it just wasn't for me.
I was always raised, you finish what you start. Mm-hmm. Whether it was sports growing up in school, or projects, or a job, or a project, or you finish what you start. My mentors, several of them, well, basically all of them that I mentioned, were all certified smoke divers. We're all certified smoke divers in the state of Florida. And their mentality and a lot of their training was based on that type of mentality, meaning acclimation to your gear, staying in gear a long time, knowing yourself, air management, a lot of different aspects of their mentality was based on the programs that they went to and their mentors before them. And I always wanted to complete that for myself as a personal goal, to find out who am I and what am I made of. And I'm not saying that in a cocky or arrogant way, but this was for me, to show me that I could get to a point where you think, man, I don't have anything else. And to be able to mentally push through that fog and complete it. And then you, of all people, know once you complete it, you're like, that was crazy. I can't believe I actually did that. Absolutely. And it's a confidence builder to know that when I get to this point, if I have to, I can push through it. And that's why I did it, for me, as a personal goal. to improve me.
I love it. So, Cap, one last thing before we wrap this up. What would you tell day one Captain Eric Price with what you know now?
Day one, like new captain person?
First day, walks in the station, green as fucking the Amazon.
Oh, wow. Well, it would be a very long conversation, but for time's sake, never forget where you came from before you make a decision. Lead by example. Be accountable and responsible for your actions, and never send emails, text messages, or makes phone calls when you're hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. The term is called HALT. And I learned that in 5 years of counseling. So I did get a mental tune up. But, you know, when you're hungry, angry, lonely, or tired, if you send emails, make decisions, send text messages or phone calls, it's going to be a bad decision. Just, you know, learn from your people. You know, remember where you came from, remember what you used to do, remember your mentors, have some great mentors on speed dial, ask questions before you can make decisions if possible. And just let them know that, you know, with all that information, it's going to take you probably at least 5 years to become a good officer, because you have to learn how to be accountable for yourself and responsible. You have to learn from your mistakes. You have to be receptive. You have to grow, and it takes about 5 years, for me it did, to get into a groove, and I'd share that with them.
Cap, thank you so much. I appreciate it. For everybody, one takeaway here, you know, and it's stuck with me, you know, be responsible and accountable for everything you do, and you'll be super successful. So, Cap, thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Have a great day, man. Thanks for having me. Take care.